Things that I wish were in Ark Survival Ascended. I've played Ark Ascended for a while now, and Ark Survival Evolved for even longer, and there are still 5 things that I just wish were in the game. Now, I don't think any of these things necessarily need to become part of the game, but they're just things in the game I think would just make the game, like, more fun to play. So yeah. Starting off the list, we have mini world bosses, or actually more mini world bosses. One of my favorite things about Valguero and why it's like one of my favorite custom maps in the game is that it has a mini world boss in the form of the Broodmother. The Broodmother in the game is technically really the only world boss in the game, at least the world bosses I want in the game, as there are the Titans on Extinction and a lot of bosses on Fjord. But for every one of those bosses, I think you need to summon them in using, well, stuff to summon them in. But one of my favorite things about the Broodmother on Valguero is she's just chilling there. She is just there, just waiting. I wish there was more stuff like this in Ark. I would love if there were just more world bosses on other maps, and even if they weren't like confined to one space, it'd be so fun and scary if you were just like traveling on the ground and all of a sudden you encounter a world boss. I think that'd be awesome, and I love them if they were also like unique creatures. As much as I love the Broodmother on Valguero, I wish it was just some more unique boss to Valguero or other maps in the game. Like, it'd be awesome if Ragnarok had a world boss of, say, like some sort of like a mini dragon boss that wasn't, you know, the dragon from the island or Wyvern. It'd be really cool if there was some sort of boss like that in the game. So yeah. Number 2 is custom bosses for custom maps. One of my favorite things about Crystal Isles was that it introduced custom bosses to custom maps in the form of in the Queen Wyvern. And I love that this was a trend that happened from Crystal Isles to every other custom map introduced after Crystal Isles, like Lost Island and Fjord, especially Fjord. And I thought it was really cool. Having custom bosses for custom maps just makes the map feel more unique and stand out. Like one of my least favorite things about maps like the Center, Ragnarok, and Valguero is that the bosses are just bosses from other maps. I would love it if each one of them had their own unique boss. I think the Center having some sort of like water boss, like I think a giant megalodon would be really cool since the Center really centers around water. And, you know, everyone in the game wants, like, a giant megalodon. So it'd be cool if they gave, like, players sort of a giant megalodon sort of in the form of a boss. I think people would be happy with that. You know, with Ragnarok also having, like, a more, like, medieval, I guess, like, type of boss. Like, maybe, I guess, a Cyclops or just another dragon. A different type of dragon. It'd be really cool if we had a different type of dragon in the game. So, yeah. And, yeah. I think that would be really cool. And it's just something I want added to the game. So yeah. Number 3 is Crawlpod Sickness. Crawlpod Sickness in single player is just stupid and just shouldn't be a thing. Crawlpod Sickness is for PvP players, as it's not even something in PvE. So I don't get why it's something in single player, as it's really annoying in single player. And I know you can kind of turn this off in single player by turning your world into PvE. But the problem in PvE is that it does more than just change the Crawlpod stuff. In Ark Survival Evolved, at least, it made it so you couldn't pick up your tames with other tames. So, example, if you want to pick up like a Parasaur with your RG, you can't do that because you are playing PvE. And this is detrimental because sometimes, you know, I remember one time I wanted to save my direwolf from a pack of like wild direwolves, and I was trying to pick it up, but I literally couldn't because I was in PvE, which was so annoying. But yeah, I think they should just make it, there be a button that says like, just disables Crawlpod Sickness, or just disable it in general for single player. It's stupid that affects single player. And I know there might be another way to get rid of Crawlpod Sickness by turning single player settings on, but I don't play with that because, again, just like PvE, that affects more than just cryopods. That affects like how easy it is to beat the game. And every time I play the game, or any game, I want the game to be the hardest it can be because it's the most fun I have in any game. I don't like to beat a game on easy or medium. I like to beat it on alpha or like the strongest or hardest version you can. So yeah. Number 4 is taming guides within the game. One of my least favorite things about the new dinosaurs being introduced into the game is that I can't just tame them or learn how to tame them by playing the game. I always have to go on YouTube or Google to search up how to tame these creatures, and I just don't like that. I wish I could just tame these creatures by playing the game. And I know some people would say like, oh, you can get the dossiers. Well, that's not possible with every creature. For example, the Carcharodontosaurus and Deinosuchus. To get the dossier for those creatures, you have to tame them, meaning that it's literally impossible to get the dossier before you can tame those guys. I'm sure that affects other creatures, especially the more newer ones where they were introduced after dossiers were introduced or weren't introduced to any specific map. Like, again, the Dinosaurs and Carcharodontosaurus. So yeah, I wish they did something, like my idea by changing this is that in supply drops, you know how they're like recipes within supply drops. I wish they would do something like that, but have like, almost like note guides or like pages in a book that showed you how to tame or gave you like hints or just straight up told you how to tame creatures in the game. For example, in a green supply drop, it can tell you how to tame a Triceratops. It's like use trank darts or trank arrows or some sort of other way to knock out a creature, and try to aim for the back or body of the Triceratops, as the Triceratops' head will negate most damage and teleport them to him. And then like red supply drops, it could be like, to tame a Carcharodontosaurus, you gotta drag a body to the Carcharodontosaurus to gain its trust. Something like that I think just be really cool, and even though it would be tedious, it would make it so there at least is some way to actually know how to tame creatures in the game. As again, I appreciate everyone on YouTube who makes guides on how to tame the creatures, but I wish I could just learn how to play the game by playing the game. So yeah. And number 5, we have improving boss fights, especially for single player. Again, I play single player, so this is the only thing I know. I wish in boss fights there was at least a setting where you can put in single player that said doesn't use up the consumable objects. For example, the artifacts and apex drops. Since I like to fight alpha bosses all the time, getting the artifacts can just be a pain, especially in single player where you can't farm artifacts when otter because the artifact will literally just not respawn. So you have to leave the cave and wait a little and go back in. And sometimes in single player, the artifact doesn't even spawn at all. So yeah, you can't like farm artifacts in single player, and apex drops are honestly not that annoying to get, but yeah, honestly they're not that annoying to get. I guess a Giga Heart is sort of annoying because Gigas spawn so rarely, but yeah, they're not that big of a deal. But I still wish there was some way in single player where you can have it so like artifacts don't get used up, because going to get each artifact again and again individually is just so annoying and almost makes me like just like want to quit before I even fight the boss, because it's not fun to like refight bosses if I have to just every single time. But yeah, but also again, that's like sort of how the game works. However, one thing I want more than both of those two boss fights is just showing you how many creatures you have on the boss platform saddle when you're on the boss platform saddle and doing a boss fight. One of my least favorite things in Ark or about the boss is just setting up my creatures to go on the platform and trying to figure out which ones are in the platform and which ones are not, as you only have like 20 or 30 seconds to like, if somewhere outside the circle, to get them in the circle, and it's just really annoying. I wish they could just have it like, maybe when you access the terminal, it tells you how many creatures are on the platform, or even when you are doing it, like you've already activated the boss fight and you know the dome is starting to form. I wish it would just tell you like, you have like, what, like 10 out of 20 creatures within the platform, so you would know that you have to move some creatures into the platform, because you of course don't have all 20. I am thankful they do this with something in the tech cave, as it makes the tech cave way easier, as if you know how many creatures to bring in, you're not worried that you left some behind or some are missing, as you know exactly how many are in the tech cave with you. And I wish they just did something like that for the boss platform when you are like ascending to the boss arena. So yeah. But anyway, that concludes the list. This is just a little video I want to make. Just 5 things that I wish were in the game. Now, I don't think really any of these, maybe apart from 3 and the end of 5, need to actually be added into Ark Ascended, but I would love if they were added to Ark Ascended. So yeah, with that being said, thanks so much for watching. Have a nice day, and bye-bye.